And can we call Mr. John Nicol? Thank you, Louise. We move now to item 5. Tēnā koutou katoa, no mai haere mai, and very warm welcome everybody to our public agenda this afternoon. Can I acknowledge our councillors and any of our community who may have joined us today for this council meeting. I'd like to welcome now a board member from the Hawke's Bay Airport, Mr. John Nicol, to present the annual report and update on our airport. Welcome to you, John. Sorry to have kept you waiting. And I'm sure, and Jess, welcome Jess, to take us through. Please be seated, and if you'd wish to add anything to the report or explain any parts of it, we'd be very pleased to hear.
Jess and I just had a chat outside, so she's going to go first.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. I will take the report as read. I just want to touch on a couple of areas of this. The first one is the effect of the change of legislation around tax. So the airport had to book a they had to book a tax adjustment which impacted on the net profit considerably, which was outside of their control, which led to the after-tax profit of 855k. John has a couple of slides to present to as well. But overall, the airport had a good year. Passenger numbers were up a little bit on the prior year, but which was, last year was quite high considering the sort of increase in passenger numbers last year because of COVID in previous years, meaning that the airport was a lot busier than usual, and revenue was up 3%. So overall, the airport's had a great year, and I'll leave John to talk to some more specifics on that.
Thank you, Jess, and kia ora everyone for the second time this week. Apologise for the overexposure. Wendy Harvey, my chair, is at another board meeting, and our CFO is taking a well-deserved bit of R&R, so I'm third drop, so I'm here. But I am across the slide, so it shouldn't be too painful, hopefully. And I just wanted to, before we start, just remind everybody, the airport's asset base is 2.5% size of council's asset base, right? So we're a small business, turnover 13 million, but 655,000 people go in and out a year. So I'd argue that of all the asset bases in Hawke's Bay, the airport is used, and probably 60% of those are local and 40 are out-of-towners. So we do have high volume, often low contact through there, but we are, just on the face of the balance sheet, a small business that actually touches quite a few people. What do I push, Jess?
I haven't used this before.
Do you want me to draw?
Yeah, please.
Thank you, Bruce. I say ding. Thank you. Look, there's a lot of info up there on the slide deck, but there's really what I'd like to take that as read, but there's 4 areas that I'd really like to speak to. And the first one is, it's been 5 years since we introduced the ambassadors to the airport, and that's an area that we are particularly proud as a board and management of. There's over 30 people volunteer, and a high percentage of those folks are still there from day one. But we also realize that they are volunteers, and we have a pretty stringent health and safety protection plan around them because they interface with all members that use the airport. But they are outstanding, and you would be blown away by the amount of information that they collate and how they help passengers coming through the turnstile, all sorts of stuff, which is really good. So I applaud them, and the fact that most of them are still there, I think they really love it. So that's a real success story. The other thing, which is boring but critical as an airport, is called Part 139. Every 5 years, the civil aviation comes and runs more than a thermometer across the airport. Incredible deep dive, because if they pull your license away from you, we don't have a regional airport. So they go through your safety plans, the maintenance plans on your fire trucks, our people on the campus. It's a very extensive review, and we flew, excuse the pun, but went through with flying colors. So we are certificated for another 5 years. They do interim ones, but if you fail that, which has happened twice in NZ's history, they pull your license. So we're very happy that we got through that. And I guess another thing I really was pleased about as a director, and so with the board, was we've always had an asset management plan, but it was prepared by Becca. So it always looked at the assessment of the runway, and is it getting old, and do you need to spend money? We are tired of that, and we've got an asset manager that we've employed. So the asset management plan has branded us. It ties into our values and our purpose, and it's our asset management plan that the consultants now peer review, not the other way around. So that was actually a major breakthrough, and we do have some significant CapEx coming up in the future, including $8 million for a new fire station. So there's quite a lot of stuff that's in the asset management plan. And probably the last thing on this slide that I really wanted to chat about, I'll touch on a few other things, is our digital advancement. Like we use some software at the airport that accumulates passenger data, sales from the cafe, car park data. It's an amazing, of all the boards I'm on, I can honestly say Hawke's Bay Airport's probably the smallest, but uses data better than boards that are 5 times big, 10 times bigger. So we've got customer survey data, we've got a whole bunch of stuff that is all in a single data warehouse. So if you came in and said, how many people don't like the quality of the bathrooms, we've got 5,000 survey data that can report all that. So for planning and stuff, it's a real breakthrough. And the people that have that software were on site a couple of weeks ago and said that Hawke's Bay Airport's using it the most advanced, apart from Auckland, in the country. So we've got great data that should drive our decision making. And a lot of that's Rochelle, the CFO. She's really keen on digitalization, which the board are more than happy to let her drive. Ding. Are you on the next one already? Thanks. As I said, our revenue's not gigantic, 13 million, 5.8 million operating expenditure. And what should be comforting for you as a shareholder is every year we refresh our pricing with Air New Zealand. 2 things they look at, our capital program and our OPEX. And they benchmark us with all the other airports in New Zealand. And in my tenure on the board, they've yet to challenge that OPEX, which gives me comfort as a director that we're in sync at least with all the other airports. They challenge CapEx all the time, but the OPEX they've kind of left alone. Just as Jess said, 2.2 million after tax after we adjusted for that one-off nasty $3 million tax change. And just down the bottom, we're currently geared at just under 30%, which is debt divided by debt plus equity. I'm happy with 30. To be honest, I'd be happy with 40, but when you get above that, you should be cautious. So our debt levels are manageable at the moment, but going forward, whether we need equity, I know it's the E word, but how we fund capital in the future is going to be a challenge, I think. Next one. This is the key one, obviously, passenger numbers. Let's round it up amongst friends. 655,000 passengers last year, the year ending June. The all-time record was just under 900,000 when Jetstar was flying in. So 655. I can tell you that Palmerston North Airport's numbers around about 500,000. So that's a sister airport, obviously on the other side of the island, but we are above that. But we need those passenger numbers because we need revenue for our capital program. The airport is built to handle 1 million passengers. So if we had 1 million passengers, the cost would not be linear to that million. So we would have considerably better cash flow if we had 1 million, and we are geared up for it. But the other thing that's noted up there is, and it's on the next page as well, demand is easing, definitely easing, right? The Hawke's Bay Auckland flight, Air New Zealand love it. They almost call us a main trunk route because it's 11 flights a day, 85% full on average. But Hawke's Bay Wellington, because of what's happening in the city, those numbers are down, and Christchurch is still pretty solid. But Auckland Napier is still the premier route. But I am just signaling we had about 655,000 for this current financial year. That's going to be a real challenge. It's just the economic times that we're in, really. Thanks, Bruce. And this was just, and it's, I just saw, I can't even read it and it's in front of me, but that's horrible. Sorry about that. It's horrible. It's just a snapshot on the commercial dashboard of where we get some of our revenue from that's not from flying passengers, AKA or New Zealanders, the car park, taxis and shuttles, car rentals, advertising is about 20,000 a month for the electronic screens down there. The car parks, 200 and something thousand a month. So we do have some alternate revenue streams, but they're all tied to passenger numbers. So if there's a lot of people flying, there's great car park rental, there's great money through the cafe, et cetera. But just signaling that is starting to stagnate a bit. Thanks, Bruce. Talk about now in the future. As I've signaled, we are down on passenger numbers in the first quarter, which is the period ending September. The average plane is 84% full, which means if your flight's canceled, by the time you get your phone out or go to try to get on the next flight, there's only 4 to 5. Our net profit after tax is tracking first quarters ahead of budget, which is a solid outcome. The people side of stuff is we've made significant progress. So health and safety, a huge refresh, not only for our business, but on campus. But most importantly, the last bullet point under people, which is a refresh of all our plans post-Gabriel. Okay, because, you know, that's business continuity, emergency response if there's a tragedy on the runway, aerodrome emergency, obviously inside the aerodrome, fire, volcanic ash, crisis. So all those plans have been updated, which is, and they're short, punchy plans that I could show any one of you, and they actually are reasonably easy to read. So, and that was the right thing to do. And plus, ironically, our insurers said, "You are doing that, aren't you?" So they rightly so, said, "We want to make sure you've got good hazard plans. So if something does go wrong, we're not liable for something that shouldn't have happened." So we wanted to do that as a board anyway, but that was a byproduct, was the insurer said, "Well done." And then sustainability and resilience is obviously hugely important to us. We work really closely with predominantly regional council to do water measurement and see whether the sea's rising there and all that other good stuff. So that's probably a topic for us every second or third board meeting, getting updates on all that water data. And we've got sensors all around the airport, and the board are hugely conscious of asset resilience around climate. So there's the carbon angle, obviously, which is the accreditation that we're proud of, but as important these days is asset resilience. So I just wanted to give you comfort as the shareholder that that's next to health and safety, that's probably the most topical issue on our agenda, is climate, really. I think that's it. Sorry, it's a bit of a speed.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, John, for your presentation. We've got quite a few questions, so we look forward to hearing from you. Can I just acknowledge the work that Judy did in bringing the airports conference to Toi Toi in Hastings? It was significant to have the airports from all around the world visiting us, and we felt incredibly proud and as well as humbled by us having these very big players in our city, and you know, that's true partnership, I believe. So thank you.
I'll pass it on, and I can assure you the feedback that the airport got directly from that, they loved this province. Loved it.
Awesome. I just have a question, really. Sure. And I see, you know, the Hawke's Bay Marathon usually brings in about 5,000 visitors. I'm not sure what it does this year, but we've had 2 marathons because of cyclone. And, you know, those significant events, whether it's Art Deco or Horse of the Year, not so much, but definitely marathons. Has the board considered a contribution towards Hawke's Bay tourism?
Short answer, no. Our contribution has been more to try to get Air New Zealand's battling with their fleet. Let's be honest, they've got aging ATRs and they're publicly saying this aging. So we have always been very assertive to try to get them to put extra flights on and to any spare planes they've got to route them to Hawke's Bay when we've got a major event on. But yes, as far as a contribution to that, no, but we have tried to get the aviators to fly here more. And even accommodate charter planes on the tarmac and everything we can do to get more people into the province. What
Okay,
we've done for that.
thank you. Councillor Fowler?
Yep, thank you through your worship. Thanks for your presentation, John. Without getting into the technical details, the deferred tax, was that picked up as a result of an external audit, or how was that picked up? Or
Very good question. There was a law change in the middle of last year, and our team was, originally there were the potential for some, I don't want to call them loopholes, but for some ability to defer and spread that. And then our tax advisors take it on the chin. And I did have a look at Nelson Airport, which is bigger and busier than us. Their hit was 6 million. So you pretty much, you could make a fight to defer it for 3 years, but the advice we got was it's non-cash, take it on the chin and move on.
cool. Yep, thank you. And also too, the consultants fees, which I know it's about 25% of employee benefits. What's the consultancy made up of? I see it's an ongoing
Yep.
thing as well.
And this year, thankfully, it's coming down. A lot of that was, we had quite a lot of catch up to do this calendar year. I'm kind of speaking in code a little bit, but a lot of it's health and safety refresh, and getting all those plans refreshed and stuff costs, because you need specialists in there to help you with that. So a lot of that we discussed as a board, probably a third of that should be one-off. So excellent. Thanks, Michael.
Thank you, John.
Great, thank you. Councillor Harvey?
Yes, thank you. Just to follow on from Ms. Andra's question.
Yep.
Will you consider making any contribution to Hawke's Bay tourism into the future based on the changes that are pending?
I'd love to understand what those changes that are pending are.
So just in summary, through you, Your Worship, one of the issues facing the region is, Tourism Hawke's Bay, which is our destination marketing function, has no funding certainty beyond the 30th of June next year. The Regional Council has decided not to,
That's right.
to fund it for one more year. So the issue that we're all working on collectively is, given it's worth tourism's worth $800 million to the regional economy, how are we going to come up with a funding model? And I guess, that's something that all the councils have to think about, but we're also looking for other partners that, share the objectives around drawing visitors to the region to think about that. And hence, I think the question about airport and port and how do you think about the value of that?
I think the value is
function.
immense, and I think, to answer, we had a strategy session 2 or 3 weeks ago, and we talked about that. And my view is if we're contributing, I want an element of control of that. So just contributing is one thing, but if you're contributing with an element to influence your contribution to actually drive revenue for the airport, then I'd absolutely be for looking at that. As opposed to just a straight, here's 200 grand, I'd rather say, hey, look, if we're doing that, how can we get a return on that investment? And you can normally do that by helping out.
Yeah, I just think just looking at your stats and stuff, and 60% visitors,
Yeah.
40% local.
Yep.
And 60% of those visitors are coming here for either visit family or friends, or for leisure.
Yep.
So it's significant when you talk about the numbers, 650,000 passengers. You've got a lot of skin in that game.
Yep.
So for me, it's quite important that the airport understands that.
Yeah, no, we do.
Looks at a way of actually making sure that your numbers,
Yeah, I agree.
stack up.
And one thing, this is where I really battle, to be honest, as being a director of the airport, if I'm frank. Our operating surplus is $8 million. So out of that, we got to fund CapEx, debt repayment, interest and tax, and dividends for shareholders. So by the time you crank those 5 numbers up, the amount that's left up, but there are tradables between dividends and contributions to tourism. So there are 4 or 5 moving parts. So long story short, I don't think you'd find the Hawke's Bay Airport Board at all adverse to being a bigger player in that space. I'm just saying, as long as we could have some influence in how that money was deployed, so we could make a buck out of it as well as the region, that would be my answer.
Appreciate that. Councillor Watkins?
Yes, thank you, Worship. John, any indication that Jetstar could be coming back into the region?
It's a really good question, and we're lucky to have on our board, and it's your appointment, Darren Kuzak, who is an aviation savant, I'd like to say, which is great to have him around the board table, right? So he is always close to those conversations all around the country. They're always keen on the big centres, always completely neutral on the smaller centre. So they won't commit one way or the other. Their focus is on the big centres of Queenstown, Auckland, Wellington, Christchurch. So, but it's something that our team are always, they were just in Aussie a while ago talking to Qantas saying, you know, what is your view for New Zealand? Very non-committal at the regional level.
Thank you. My second question, John, and this is probably a little bit maybe before your time. At the time of the cyclone, when the power grid went out, my understanding is the airport was able to function because you had a generator.
Yep.
And I know you had surface water pretty close around there. And I asked the question at the time, where was that generator situated? Was it at ground level or was it higher up? And they said, oh no, it's at ground level. Yeah. And I just did ask the question, should that be looked at? If that's your emergency source of power, the grid goes out, should that actually be raised?
Yeah, very good question. And we actually had a board subcommittee for 6 months after Gabriel to take all the learnings. And one thing I was immensely proud of is that we have 500 people in the terminal using Wi-Fi and the power, right? Because we're the only place that side of town that had it. But there were some learnings. And if I'm honest, I can't specifically remember if it was that one. But one of the learnings I do remember is we got some diesel from Napier Port and they struggled to get up to the generator to fill the tank. So just the simple learning was, well, let's make sure we metal that driveway so they can get through and it's not all mud. So there were a bunch of learnings, but I will look at that. But there was a whole bunch of stuff we learned from that. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Councillor Teo Skipworth?
Thank you, Worship. Thanks for the report. I just want to tag on to Councillor Harvey's comment. In the weekend we had Iron Māori events in Napier, and a few of the participants mentioned the way they were welcomed at the airport was lovely, and that they were told that they've had a number of Iron Māori whānau come through. So that kind of adds on to, you know, you want maintenance. If anything less, you want maintenance.
Yeah.
But my question is, the report was great, talking about the past, and you mentioned equity injection. Have you got a plan for the future of how you do increase your financial?
Yes, I wouldn't be a good director if I didn't say equity, because you can only do so much typically with debt, right? And when you're geared up 40% and you get another COVID, it's not too great, right? I just think that if we're going to, which we always say every year, try to develop that business park and maybe put a little bit of money into a solar park. But even notwithstanding that, we've got a big capital program. Just like council assets wear out at sort of not a very convenient time. Mm-hmm. So we can, all our modelling shows we can do it all with debt, but that's often not the smartest way. And we've obviously got this no secret. Mana Ahuriri is looking at, they've got the option to buy the Crown shares. And I still think, as a board, we keep way out of shareholder matters because that's between shareholders and we don't want to be seen to be influencing one way or the other. But that option, I understand, is still live. So there is a potential that the airport could be 100% locally owned, which I think is a really cool thing. But so no definite plan, but I just know, looking at the capital modelling for the next decade, debt levels definitely go up to a level where I'm just comfortable with it, but it'd be lovely if 10 million of that was shareholder equity and the rest was debt. But it is survivable with debt, but it's not the ideal mix.
If I may, Your Worship, just a follow-up question. I just was probably leaning towards more along the innovative ideas that the airport
Yeah, absolutely.
may have.
Now, good call. And I shouldn't say the lazy way, the most convenient way is to do it with debt, right? But there's plenty of ways to do project finance, bring in other partners and ring fence certain developments on the airport. So the board is absolutely up with that. So just getting blue chip debt up to here to where you're nervous is okay, but it may not be the smartest way. So project finance and ASB and our other bankers are always pitching alternative ways to fund stuff. So I just think in the future we're going to have to be, because we need to spend quite a lot of money over the next decade to maintain that asset. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Councillor Nixon.
Thank you, Your Worship. I noticed that debt repayment, 23 million, there was no repayment.
Yep.
which is of some concern to me, because things don't seem to be getting any easier out there and look like they'll be like that for a while. What is the anticipation for the next 12 months and beyond?
Debt going up.
Yeah.
If I'm frank, because we've got an $8 million fire station, a $5 million runway overlay. It's over the next decade. I mean, there is the CapEx program, just like council, is really chunky in the next. So that's why I just floated that idea about a mix of equity and creative financing and stuff, because we are a small business with not a lot of cash flow, but we're capital intensive, right? So I'd be less than truthful to you if I thought debt was going to go down. It's going to go up.
That is the way I've read the
Yes,
report
and
as
you
well.
You are correct.
And I sort of, it worries me, you talk about the fire station, $8 million and so on. Profitability, I would claim is high.
No.
And so I'm just wondering, is the airport going to remain viable unless there is a cash injection of some sort, or, because I don't think councils are going to be that.
Yeah, that's a really
keen.
good. The only good thing, that's a really good question. The good thing is that when we put an asset that's bread and butter into the denominator, Air New Zealand pays it in their ticket price. So if you do, that's when they analyze your capital extensively. And if they don't like what you're putting into your denominator, they will not let you price it. But a fire station and airport lighting and bread and butter stuff, you can put it in there. So from a viability point, as long as the passengers keep coming in, we will get revenue for the fire station. If the pack numbers went down to 300,000, it would be very tricky.
The second question I had related to, you talked about Sun Air
Yes.
being new services.
Yep.
They are the only other regular scheduled airline presumably going through Hawke's Bay Airport. You can answer that in a minute.
Yep.
And where does the future lie there? And what significance are they in the overall passenger numbers and revenues?
Very good question. Air Napier does fly. They quite often do charters.
Yep.
So if you want to get to Auckland quick and stuff. So Sun Air, non-Air New Zealand, it's probably 1%.
Thank you. Those are the.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nixon. Councillor Kerr.
Thank you, Your Worship. John, your CEO role is still vacant. Can you give us an update on that? And we've heard about some of the risks. I'm really interested in what are the greatest opportunities out there.
Excellent. The first one, I am kind of under the dome of silence, but we are absolutely coming down the home straight
Lovely.
very quickly. Very hopeful of that. We have just been lucky to have a director of the caliber we've got to effectively be MD, and I can say to you that there were a number of hygiene and other factors, which is health and safety plans. That particular director, 1 or 2 days a week, has got all that in great shape. So whoever picks up the cudgel can get straight into strategy and not have to fix up housekeeping things, which is a joy. But so we have had the luxury of being selective. We advertised to the market twice. There was no one there that I would even remotely have made an offer to. This round is considerably different,
Great.
which is great. I forgot your second question.
Opportunities, exciting opportunities.
I think digitalization is huge. I think we've got a gap there where Valentino's was, so there's an opportunity there for another outlet of some sort, maybe food, may not be food. I think we've got an opportunity, and this is a risk mitigator, is to get a roundabout at the other end where it's closed off. Now we only got one route in and one route out, and if Gabriel had been 50 mils more, we would have been able to get in or out. So there's an opportunity for a second exit. I also think there are real opportunities for the high-end market here in Hawke's Bay is to support Air Napier and others that are trying to bring jets and everything else in, because it's quite a high fee to land and take off jets. But it still remains the business park, but you can't force people to sign up there if they're not overly thrilled. And I don't know whether it's climate issues, but it's not through lack of trying. And then the solar farm, I think I've said to you before, is that when the legislation in 2021 was changed about what is a wetland, that officially ruled out half the area we had for solar. But technology has increased so much that we can almost get the output we wanted to on the original land on half. And we're talking to Mana Ahuriri to potentially use some of the Land Court land next door. So that technology has allowed us to get excited about that again.
Thank you.
No worries.
Thank you. That's very, very helpful information for us. Thank you. Councillor Fowler?
I'm happy to move, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Fowler. Councillor Hickey?
Kia ora, Your Worship. I just, over the years, I've seen many international and dignitaries come through the airport and various mana whenua engagement in the airport and welcoming those visitors. Is there anything more formal that's coming up in the plans where there be a dedicated group that can be based there or support any kind of international or high valued customers
Yeah, that's a good.
like Auckland?
Yeah,
Is there-
and that's a really good question, and it's something that, to take Councillor Harvey's question, that's something that Tourism Hawke's Bay, so our commercial team are in discussions with Tourism Hawke's Bay saying, how can we, and I know somebody here asked me a couple of years ago, and I've been hugely remiss, doesn't even say kia ora and welcome to this region when you come in through those turnstiles. So there's that and a welcoming presence. It's absolutely, it's a month ago was being chatted about between tourism and us, so I will take that away.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Councillor Sholem?
Happy to second your
Thank you, Councillor Sholem. Councillor Kerr, can I just leave an action for you with the regional transport plan? We have raised before the need for the Hawke's Bay Airport to have a second roundabout to create future opportunities and also resilience. Can you follow that up for us with the regional transport plan?
I'm happy to take that as an action, but
Thank
I'm
you.
not promising John a roundabout.
No.
No, no, it's not our state
Needs to get-
highway, but we would be grateful to be able to get a case, like a business case, something done to identify the importance of that resilience. Councillor
Chair.
Nixon?
Yeah, sorry, I did have a third question. I forgot that, didn't write it down. A connection with our ground transport. There's been talk for as long as I can remember about somehow connecting us to the Ghost Bus services, and we've all told it's on the way.
Yeah.
Still hasn't happened. Where are we up to?
I don't know, if I'm honest. I'll check. I honestly don't know, because it's been on the agenda, off the agenda, on the agenda, I've kind of, it doesn't on my radar, but I'll definitely follow that up. Thank you.
Thank you. So I have a movement and a seconded. No further questions or comments. I'll put those recommendations. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Any against? Thank you. That's carried. Thank you very much for your presentation today. Really appreciate that. All the very best. We're very proud of our airport, and everybody does a wonderful job. Item 6, very warm welcome to the senior housing team and looking at the annual rent review. Thanks. Thank you, Bex. And, run that ladies. Welcome, Joe. Bex. And Rudy. Excellent. So, councillors, we've had a bit of a deep dive. I know that a couple of you have spoken to me with questions, and so this is the opportunity now to just work through those questions and on this paper. Thank you. Did you have anything to add, Joe, to your paper or Bex?
Kia ora, Mayor. Yes, through you, Your Honour, I'll just run through some points of the paper that has been presented. So this paper presents options for a rent increase for the senior housing portfolio. And for some background, there's an attachment to this paper, the senior housing operational management policy.
We've got your speaker on, Bruce.
Sorry.
Oh, thank you. Just so everyone can hear.
Sorry about that, I'll start again. Just for some background, there's an attachment to the paper, the Senior Housing Operational Management Policy that was approved by Council in October of last year, that runs through some criteria such as the eligibility criteria for rental applicants, the income and asset thresholds, etc. And the decision in that paper was to have an annual rent review, and that's in accordance with the Residential Tenancies Act. And of course, we can only increase the rents once every 12 months. And the last rent increase occurred in January of this year. That was for setting the rents at $260, increasing them from $178.50 per week to $260 per week. That rental increase, however, has not generated sufficient revenue to meet the portfolio's expenditure. Just to note that the council's LTPC to rental increase of 2.1% and forecasted deficit for the 24-25 year of $265,000. But the financial operating deficit is projected to be minus 308,584 for the next year. And factors that have been contributed to this projected deficit include council paying the full cost of the rates and insurance for the 220 units in the senior housing portfolio. Recent rates increase of up to an average of 19% and increasing insurance costs. So now I'll just run through the options that are provided in the paper. Option 1 is for a 5.3% increase of $13.78 per week. Option 2 is for a 16.2% increase of $42.12 per week. Option 3 is for an 8.4% increase of $21.76 per week. Option 4 for a 3.3% increase of $8.58 per week. And option 5 for a 2.1% increase of $5.16 per week. So officers recommend option 1 being a 5.3% increase that will take the weekly rent from the current $260 per week to $273.78 per week. So if there are any questions.
Sholem?
Thank you, Your Worship. Looking at the report, I'm just really interested in, if you could please expand for me, 5.5, where it says there's a 70% risk that actual expenses will exceed the budget in the next 3 years. Am I reading it correct that even at 5.3%, that 70% risk exists?
Thank you, Councillor Sholem, through you, Your Honour. Yes, that's correct.
Your Worship. It's all right. It's okay.
Yes, that is correct. It would still be forecasting a deficit over the next 10 years. It's not going to come back into surplus until that time.
Okay, so just for clarity through you, Your Worship, so the reason for that 70% risk is because we're not projecting at meeting that break-even point until year 10 with 5.3% annual increase, is that? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Worship. Just a question for me around 3.2. There is no central government funding to support council's portfolio. Who does get government funding to support their portfolio?
Through you, Your Worship. Yes, that is usually through having a CHIP, a community housing provider, or a trust or such entity. They would get an income support. Yes.
That's right.
The income rental subsidy.
What difference would that make to any individual household's rental?
So,
It's actually Nigel to answer that question because that's very...
yeah, very pertinent question through you, Your Worship. Great question, Councillor Dixon. So the income-related rent subsidy, which is only available to Kāinga Ora or a community housing provider, by law, the councils are not able to be a community housing provider. So those that are fortunate enough to end up in those forms of housing pay no more than 25% of their income in rent, and the government subsidises the balance between that capped rate at 25% and the market rent.
That's why we've seen a lot of councils exit out of their senior housing portfolio.
Is there any way this council can have an action to address this particular problem that councils have got?
Well, we've taken that to local government conference to remits in the past.
But it hasn't gone anywhere.
And the government has had no interest in councils becoming CHIPs, and that's why many have exited out of senior housing portfolios.
Thank you, Worship.
Thank you. Councillor Butto.
Thank you, Your Worship. Has there been any change to the super this year, and do we expect there to be any change in the rentals supplement?
Through you, Your Worship. Yes, and there is a review annually for the superannuation, and in April 1st of this year there was a 4.6% increase for superannuation, so there will be another review in the next calendar year.
And through Your Worship, in terms of the accommodation supplement, those are re-looked at through MSD when the rent increases. So what we would do is assist the senior housing tenants with their application to MSD, and then it's MSD's decision about how much they subsidise that.
But if we increase the rent, MSD, there's a reasonable chance that the accommodation supplement would increase as well.
Through you, Your Worship, yes, there is a chance that can occur, yes.
Thank you. Did everybody hear that question and answer? Quite clear on what, thank you, what that means. Councillor Teo Skipworth?
I'm aware that when we did the rent increase last year, or in January, or previous to that, there were a lot of upset residents because it was kind of just put upon them. And have we got, in that conversation, did we learn and speak to them then to say that there will be another rent increase? And I've got a follow-up from that.
Through you, Your Worship, thank you, Councillor. Yes, we did discuss then that there would be annual rent increases, and interestingly, the seniors said to us at the time that they would have preferred smaller annual increment increases than what occurred last year.
That's great to know, so that we don't have any, and I know there will be new tenants that may not have been part of that conversation. In the first part of the korero, we talked about the rent increase not covering rates and insurance. This current rent increase, is that the same? So does that mean that council are actually forking out for the rates and insurance, even with this current rent increase?
Through you, Your Worship, yes, the current rent increase won't mean that we break even at this stage, no.
Okay, so council are still effectively subsidising. Thank you.
That is an action that we would like to take back to Local Government New Zealand to address rates and insurance that councils have to pay on their housing portfolio. Councillor Nixon?
Oh, actually, I was going to move the motion because I thought it's last on the list. Can I do that now or shall I wait? Yeah, I'll move the motion. I can talk to it later.
Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Hickey. Councillor Apatu?
Thank you, Your Worship. It's just a point of clarification, if I may. When we consulted with the tenants last time, and they were obviously upset because we did do such a big increase, there was one woman that was on ACC and may not have been eligible for accommodation supplement. Do we have the ability to look at one-off hardship situations or situations where people may not be able to access accommodation supplement?
Through you, Your Worship. Thank you, Councillor. Yes, in the policy that you adopted last year, there is the ability for those kind of one-off situations for those tenants to approach council, and then obviously we would look for that.
Councillor Hickey?
Kia ora, Your Worship. Just a question in regards to the review, the annual reviews. When will the change take effect? If passed today, and I have a.
Through Your Worship, we have suggested the 28th of January, which is 12 months on from when the last increase was, and that's set out in the Residential Tenancies Act, and that allows us, plenty of time in terms of notice. 60 days notice is required.
Boy, that's what I thought. And so my second part of this question is, should we consider probably doing the reviews maybe before Christmas, as opposed to trying to get through Christmas and then a change of pricing? There's just a comment that doesn't need to be recorded as an answer today. And then a second one, with the new developments of our senior housing, what kind of comparison of these prices will the new prices, if any? And if we can't answer that today, that's okay. It's just a bit of a guideline.
Through you, Your Worship. So in regards to the 39 additional senior housing units that we're building in Parakiki, so they'll be set at 80% of the median market rent for a single bedroom unit across Hastings.
Does that sound like a dollar set? Sorry.
So in dollar terms, so when we originally did the rent appraisal and put together our sort of financial analysis to support the funding agreement, that was set at $400 per week as the median rental price for a single bedroom unit in Hastings. So that'd be set at 80% of that price.
8%, thank you.
Councillor Kerr?
I'm happy to second if you don't have a seconder, Your Worship. But my comment is actually more around a request for an action. As discussed with a few councillors, it may be a benefit that this conversation is had as part of the annual plan. What that essentially means that instead of having a conversation now, we would have had it a few months ago. The date of implementation would still remain as it is, but we get to consider this decision more holistically, understanding the waiting list, understanding the maintenance or the improvements that we've done as part of the wider council annual plan budgeting. So it's really more an action to the staff, if they could take that away and we deal with that sooner.
Happy to take it as an action, but it might be better if we formalise it in a recommendation. So what you're suggesting is that council governors have the opportunity to bring this before an annual plan process to understand senior housing portfolio.
Yeah, maybe I'll try and make it into a recommendation that council request the decision-making framework is included as part of the annual plan.
The rent review.
Yeah. I'm happy to leave it to Craig, etc.
I'll just take a couple more questions as that recommendations has been crafted. Councillor Hickey?
Oh, sorry.
Councillor Nixon?
I was going to speak in favour of, hold on.
To reply?
Yeah.
I have another question.
Oh, okay, I'll take the other question, then I'll come back to write a reply. Thank you.
Very simple, and I apologise if I have missed it. Do we currently have a policy that says we'll get to rates neutral by a certain time, or is our policy that we will be rates neutral? Because what we're doing today is actually potentially outside policy.
Through you, Your Worship, yes, it's rates neutral.
So Mayor? In which case, I think we probably need to add another comment around why we're not adhering to rates, to the rates neutral policy.
Your Worship, the answer to that one is quite simple. It says debt and. So you're allowed to have debt in order to make sure there's not a sporadic increase through time.
Thank you. I'm happy with that answer.
Thank you. Right, a reply. Thank you, Councillor Nixon.
Thanks. We went through this in some detail recently. Nobody likes to see price increases, particularly rent for our elderly. By the same token, it's not reasonable that this activity impinge on ordinary ratepayers, many of whom are no better off than the people that are living in our senior housing. And for that reason, I think we struck the balance at 5.3%, any less, and we started to raise a continuous deficit that would go on forever. Any more, and it would increase the hardship. And I think the figure has been struck very carefully, taking into account both sides of the story, and I think 5.3 is the right amount, but it has been said by other councillors that we need to have a bit of a review of exactly how we go through the process, be it annual plan or something, and I think that should still be done, but not as part of this motion. Thank you.
As the mover, are you happy with the addition of C?
Actually, I was, yes.
And the seconder? Councillor Hickey? Thank you. Has everybody, any questions on that additional recommendation? No, thank you. I'm putting that recommendation. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Any against? Thank you. That's carried. Now we move to item 7, which is the Joint Assessment and Waste Management Minimisation Plan. Can I also welcome our Youth Councillor Taylor? Nice to have you with us. Thank you. Great to have you here at the council meeting. Welcome, Angela.
Excuse me, Your Worship, did you want to briefly comment on the opening yesterday of the construction waste space?
Not at this stage, thank you. I think that's coming in the new year.
Thank you,
Thank
through
you.
you, Your Worship. I'll take the paper as read. I do have some slides that I've prepared should you'd like me to present those to you. Otherwise, I'm happy to take questions. I'll take your direction.
Is there anything in the slides that is not in the paper that we might need to be fully? No. Okay, so I'm very comfortable, council is comfortable with the information that has been supplied to you through the paper and the attachments. It's very thorough. Councillor Kerr?
Your Worship, I'm happy to move it, and I can't believe that it's 6 years ago that we did the last one of these, and it's such a great process because we have the community coming and telling us all their wonderful ideas around how we, as a community, can reduce waste. So very happy to move.
Councillor Apatu?
As Deputy Chair, I'd love to second that motion.
Thank you, Councillor Apatu. Any other members on the Waste Mins Committee? In Napier City? That one? And our partner, Ange, could you just talk to our partner Napier City? And because we're joint partners in this waste minimisation?
Certainly, through you, Your Worship. So this an identical report was presented to Napier City at the meeting last Thursday, and it was received and adopted with no further changes to the recommendations.
Thank you. Look, I just want to take a pause here and actually acknowledge where we've come from as a community in the last 6 years. And, you know, as a householder in Heritonga Hastings, what used to go out in my wheelie bin before we actually had the wheelie bins, and what we used to take and what goes out now and hardly ever goes out. It's just quite incredible, the journey that we've been on. We used to rely on those recycling depots and so forth in the urban parts of our community, and we have this incredible service. So, you know, that was a fundamental transformational change 6 years ago. I'm really proud of everybody, your work and how we've got to where we are now. Every little bit helps our landfill and reducing waste to landfill. And just to see some of our partners and to see what they are doing now with tyres, with paint, with all sorts of other areas that we're recycling, it is absolutely incredible. And we've come a long way. Not saying we've got to the end yet, we've still got a way to go, but I'm just really grateful and very proud to see how far we have come and how we are reducing waste. So I just want to thank you for your passion, your skill, your constant expertise, working with the government and looking at how we can attract funding to help us with this process, because we can't do it all on our own. And I just want to acknowledge the amazing team. They're sitting up the back. Let's give them a big round of applause. And thank you very much. So we have a mover and a seconder. Do we have any further comments or any other questions? Ange?
Just through you, Your Worship, we are hosting a joint workshop with the Ngā Mukumukui Committee and the councils, both councillors from both councils and the equivalent Takatono committee here on Friday the 22nd of November, and that is likely to be held out at Te Whare Mokipara at landfill. And the purpose of this workshop is to start pulling together the actions that will be included in the next WMMP.
Wonderful, thank you very much. Right, I'll put those recommendations, all those in, oh, sorry.
Sorry, through you, Your Worship. I just wanted to again say thank you so much, and thank you to everyone for your work. I'm pretty passionate about waste, and it's exciting to see it. For the public that may watch this later that haven't read the agenda because they don't have time. I just think our vision's pretty exciting and very real, and that it is normal for our communities to waste less, to work in partnership and value our resources in order to protect Te Tao. So I just think that's pretty powerful and pretty important. So thank you for your work, and thank you to everyone for trying to protect something so precious.
Thank you. Kia ora, councillor. Right, I'll put those recommendations. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Any against? Thank you. That's carried. Well done. Excellent work. Item 8. We are moving on now to Local Waters Done Well update. This is the beginning of bringing towards working as a region towards some more work to look at a business case and a different model. And we have Mr. Watson and Mr. Thu, and also, and we'll start with Councillor Fowler.
Yep, thank you, through your worship. The public probably is aware of the previous government's Three Waters program and how it was canned. They may not be aware of the Local Water Done Well as much, and it's a significant process for all councils that we're working through at the moment. In my opinion, it has it's right up there with the 1989 local government reforms in terms of the scale and the changes that will impact upon organisations. And I believe, and happy to move the recommendation, that this is absolutely essential that we move through this and look at it in detail in the future, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Fowler. Councillor Sholem.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Very happy to second.
Thank you, Councillor Sholem. I'll just go back to our officers in charge of next steps for us. Is there anything that you wanted to add to the report?
Other than to say, through you, Your Worship and councillors, that clearly the next phase of the work, the business case, as you're aware, the law, the new law, Three Waters is gone and Local Waters Done Well, passed on the 5th of September, is a majorly different approach than the previous government proposals. It does set very clearly that central government saying, yeah, we're not taking any of the assets and we're not funding any of this. This is entirely 100% community-owned assets that you are responsible for managing. But what we are doing is going to introduce economic regulation to make sure that as the owners of those public assets in Three Waters, you are investing enough, can finance that investment and are earning enough revenue to pay the bills, and will require the councils, either separately or jointly, to furnish a water services plan by the 5th, for approval by the 5th of September next year, that sets out that, and that will be the subject of some of those economic regulatory tests. The law requires councils to consult their communities next year on a minimum of 2 options. This work that's suggested in the business case will evaluate the 3 options. Council doing this as it is, as a business unit or as a council-controlled organisation, or the counterfactual, what does a regional or a number of councils coming together to look like. That work will be the focus for the team working with their colleagues, coordinated by the Regional Recovery Agency. That will come back to council in February, that sets out all the things that you would expect a business case to set out around the financial case, what it means for householders, what it means for the organisation, the economic, the fiscal sustainability tests, and I guess that's something to look forward to in terms of starting 2025.
Thank you. So this is the beginning of a journey. Councillor Nixon.
Yeah, thanks, Your Worship. I'm just slightly confused, perhaps, on the issue. We have 3 options in front of us, from a standalone in-house to a regional approach. I suppose the first question would be, does the cost remain essentially the same if we investigate all 3 items?
What cost are you talking about, Councillor?
The cost of this investigation, of the determination, not the actual doing it.
So I will take the question on the cost of the business case. Could someone please answer the cost of the business case, please?
Through you, Madam Chair, I think it'd be largely at the margins. Yeah, probably there's more work required to investigate 3 options than there would be 2. But whilst they're in there preparing the business case for 2 options, for completeness, you might as well do the 3 options. I think the other thing, at the moment, on basis of what information would we exclude one of the options from the business case, and I just don't think we have that level of information at this point in time to exclude an option. So moving forward with the 3 options is the most practical recommendation.
Thank you.
That's fine. I just wasn't sure whether it was worth trying to preempt, a lesser number of alternatives. So
We need to get as much information for our community as we can, and that's what the business case is going to show us.
Probably worth through you, Your Worship, just to remind councillors and the community that the costs associated with doing the business case at the moment are not being met by the ratepayers. We used the remaining better off funding that existed from the previous government's regime, plus got financial assistance from the Department of Internal Affairs, and so that's what is meeting the costs of this business case.
Councillor Teo Skipworth.
Thank you, Your Worship. A lot of the constituents that I represent, and many of us represent, have raised concerns that water is a taonga, and that the legislators could be forcing us into insolvency. And I know that'll come back in the business case, but they wanted those comments raised here for us to flag when we do our business case. Based on the water well that somehow is going to become a money well, when none of us know how deep that well is. Kia ora.
Yes, and status quo is not an option for Aotearoa New Zealand because we have to provide and produce the best quality water for our people. And in some cases, in some parts of New Zealand, councils haven't been able to do that for many, many reasons, or haven't done that. And that is why this legislation has come through. And governments have been looking at this since 1990. So, it's taken a long time to get here with various iterations of legislation. We're here now. We've got to fully understand what a best model looks like for our people, and status quo is not an option. It is simply a way that we have to find a way to go forward.
I can just add, Your Worship, I mean, it's not long, more than a year ago when you stood opening Waiaroha, the irony on that day and what that represented at the end of a journey that started for us here in 2016 was at the time there was a major water crypto issue in Queenstown, multiple boil water notices in New Zealand. So if you take it back to the last government set of numbers, and they can all be argued, but it's all at the, it was $185 billion deficit in the investment that's been made in Three Waters. And clearly, and I think it's a great point you raise, Councillor, the balance here is the cost of meeting those standards and the affordability that somebody, whether it's a ratepayer or a consumer of a water entity, has to, and that's, that's the real tension, but one that we will kind of tease out through the next stage of work.
Councillor Barrow.
Thank you, Your Worship. And I agree with a lot of the comments that have been made already. I think we exist in a new world now that's been determined by law. We are being pushed to make changes. We cannot stay the same. And I think it's like Councillor Fowler raised, it's something our community may not be as well aware of yet as it was of the Three Waters legislation and everything that comes with it. So I think this is a good step forward, and we need to make sure we've got a well-informed public to discuss this with next year, because it is an emotive issue. And we need to make sure that the facts are on the table so everyone understands exactly why we're doing it and what we're doing.
Thank you, Councillor Barrow. Councillor Watkins.
Yes, I thank you, Worship. The new government and this new water model, they've talked about new standards and regulations. Do we know in total what all those new standards are?
Through you, Worship, no.
Then that,
we're making policy before the policy.
The next question, really.
But I think the assumption is that it will all be northwards of the current standards.
Thank you. Councillor Kerr.
Kia ora.
given this is a regional business case, have there been any, has this report gone to the other councils and have they all said yes yet?
Yes, the paper has been dealt with and approved by the councils at Central Hawke's Bay and Napier today.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we have a mover and a seconder. Any further questions? Any further comments? I'll put those recommendations. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Any against? Thank you. That is carried. And all the best with the next part of the journey of bringing back a business case on what this could look like. Thank you very much. Item number 9. This is the Clifton to Tongoil Coastal Hazards Joint Committee summary. Welcome to Mr. Clues. Pardon? Oh, that's you today? Okay, thank you, Craig.
Yes, through you, Madam Chair. So this is just updates on the work of the Joint Committee. You'll see appended to the paper their meeting minutes and summary note documentation. And it's just a requirement that the partner councils that oversee the Joint Committee are kept up to date with progress.
The Joint Committee members want to speak to the summary. Councillor Dixon.
Yeah, thank you, Worship. You'll note in the papers that the 8th of August was the last time that we met as a committee, and it was handed over to the Regional Council to look after. What they do with it is in their hands, but I'd like to just suggest, depending on what they do, that we actually review what contribution we make from 1st July 2025 onwards. And could I also thank Councillor Kerr, Councillor Corbyn, Councillor Montepeta Henry, and former Councillor Redstone, who were heavily involved in this particular project over 8 years. And we've seen it through, and it's in their hands now. Let's hope they make a good job of it. Thank you. Happy to move.
Happy to second, but actually picking up on what Councillor Dixon just said then, I wonder if we're a little bit firmer that we actually cease the contribution to the Working Party.
I'll ask an officer, please. We haven't got Mr. Clues here, but we need to understand.
Let's just be an action then.
Your Worship,
We'll leave it as an action.
I asked that same question before, and we're actually paid up to the 1st July next year. So it's after that we...
So it's next year's annual plan. We'll consider it with that.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Happy that it's an action.
Excellent. So it will be part of next year's annual plan. All right, we have a mover and Councillor Kerr second. Any further comments or questions on the coastal hazard strategy? And I acknowledge 10 years of long, hard work, understanding what the future looks like.
Comment, through your worship, I think Councillor Dixon made reference to the councillors that have been involved with this project over a long period of time. Just at an officer level, can I just do the same in regards to Mark Clues? He's not here in the building today, but I think Mark's probably attended every joint committee meeting, probably every technical advisory group meeting over that time as well. It's been a huge commitment, and I think we wouldn't be here without his efforts. So,
thank you very much, Bruce. Appreciate
Apologies
that.
for forgetting, Mark.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Malcolm. Absolutely. And can we take a minute to actually acknowledge all our community who've been in those working groups? They have been part of this and are very proud of this strategy. And our mana whenua partners who've also been part of this journey. So it's a huge piece of work, and thank you to everyone involved. All right, I'll put those recommendations. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Any against? Thank you. That is carried. Thank you, Louise. This is a schedule of meetings. So you'll notice, councillors, I'm sure you've read this very, very carefully. 2025 schedule of meetings. Please note that we do try to leave some gaps for holidays. So when you see that there are not a lot of workshops or meetings, we'd like you to plan your holidays around those times. And please, if there are any questions about anything we may have missed on the schedule, this is your opportunity. Obviously, there's always going to be changes. As each council meeting, we have to add something or add a new committee or council meeting. This is just a guide for next year. Councillor Butto.
Happy to move, Your Worship.
Councillor Butto, can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Watkins? Thank you. Any questions on the schedule? Reminding you, it is just a guide. I'll put those recommendations. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Any against? Thank you. That is carried. But when you plan your trips, have a look at your schedule. When you plan your days off, and I might not need to take any holidays, leave of absence next year at all. Thank you very much, Louise. 11 and 12, there's no minor or urgent items. Item 13 we have dealt with today. That concludes our meeting today, and thank you to any of our community that may have joined us on live streaming. Thank you very much to our officers. I know you're working long days, weekends, etc. to get these items to us. There is a lot going on, and thank you, councillors, for your contribution in all of the workshops and all of the work to get to these meetings, because we do an awful lot of work trying to understand these papers so we can make informed decisions. Can I thank our community yesterday who had an amazing think tank for our future of our CBD and our CBD strategy. And what an uplifting, exciting 3 hours that we spent hearing from our community. You think you need experts and outsiders to come in? Just ask our own people, they'll tell us what they need. And that's what was so empowering yesterday for us all. So thank you for your input. We look forward to bringing that CBD work back in a workshop so we can go through what you consider priorities, what's important, and how we can have actions next week with short, medium and longer term actions for what our future looks like for our city. So thank you everyone for joining us. Enjoy the rest of your day. Mā te wā. Kia ora. And we'll just close with a karakia.
Kia ora tātou.
Thank you, Councillor Hiki.
Anei tā tātou nei kāri karakia. On the back there is a karakia. And I'll say, i noi tātou mō start. Me noi tātou. Kia tau, kia tātou katoa. Te ato whānau tō tātou ariki a ihu karaiti. Me te aroha o te atua. Me te whiwhi ngā tahitanga ki te wairua tapu. Ake, ake. Amen.
Kia ora.